Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Taro, Yoko, NieR universe. Or goodbye, I guess. Depends where you're watching this video. You could be starting your journey here, you could be ending your journey here, or you could be just coming in here for background information. This is the synopsis and retrospective of NieR Replicant Gestalt / NieR. All three games are going to be included in this conversation because they are the same game. This video will contain extreme spoilers for the entire plot, the background information, everything you can imagine. A lot of readings are going to come out of this book of the Grimoire NieR Revised Edition, as well as my Taro Yoko Strange Works of the Yokoverse book, and we're going to be diving into explaining some of the endings. While this game is a lot more self-explanatory than Drakengard 3 and 1 are, I'm still going to help you figure out some things maybe you've missed, explain what's going on, and then we're going to transition ourselves into NieR Automata. Not immediately, but we do have some work to do. So we're going to go through this timeline, background information, character details you might have missed, explaining things. Again, lots of spoilers from here on out. So if you want to watch NieR Replicant before you get all the spoilers, we have a 24 episode series of my entire playthrough of NieR Replicant, including Branch A, Branch B, Branch C, Branch D, and Branch E, all of which took me about 60 hours of playtime to do. So please go look at those videos and like them. I would appreciate it so very, very, very much. That would be fantastical. But now that we have surpassed and finished that, we can finally talk about what is happening. And let's transition into Automata. And again, we won't go right into Automata. We have a few novellas and things to talk about before we go into Automata. Why? Because while this encompasses about 1,000 to 2,000 years of history, Automata takes place 10,000 years from now. So we have a little bit of coverage to do before we get there. But let's dive in. NieR Replicant. Alright, let's just start off with the game itself. How'd you like it if you watched it? You better have. Again, it was 60 hours. Please. I cried. I sweated. I grinded. It was a lot of work. And I had to restart the game. NieR Replicant is a fantastic game. It is the revised edition, so NieR Replicant version 1.22474487139 ... is the newest updated version. This is the 10-year anniversary revised edition of NieR and NieR Gestalt. NieR and NieR Gestalt are the same game, poorer graphics. The stories are the same. They did update and add some more scenes and voicing in the new version, as well as they kind of did away with the Father NieR section. So if you know anything about NieR and me talking about this, there are two versions of the game. There is one where you are playing as a dad and a daughter, and a brother and a sister. The brother and sister one is the one that got revamped and is the main true style because it continues the flow between the characters a little bit better than the father-daughter edition, but this was released to please both types, all sorts of audiences, depending on which version you liked better. Our Father NieR does make a guest appearance in version 1.22 when you're playing the 15 Nightmares. It's a bit of a fun addition, and you get to see him a little bit, but this version is a bit older. Still good, but the game style is not as smooth and playable as it is now. The flow is a little bit more difficult. You don't get to control Vice and your weapons the same way. They did revamp it, and it's a lot better in the updated version. However, compared to some of the other games, the flow of this game is a little bit more difficult to follow in the sense that you have to replay the game so many times, and that is a very common thing in Yoko Taro's universe of hell. You have to replay stages over and over and over and over and over. While I don't know the 100% details on Drakengard 1, I know I did a retrospective on that, double check. I don't know how many times you have to replay the full game to get the full effect. I don't know if it's the exact same thing. With Drakengard 3, you replay chapters, but they're never the same. With Replicant, you have to replay the same thing over and over and over and over and over. And so it gets incredibly repetitive and a bit annoying. Each time you play through, you do get some additional, and not many, but some additional cutscenes, some additional background dialogue, some more explanations. So as you're watching the playthroughs on my channel, you'll notice that sometimes I skip through dialogue or skip cutscenes. Maybe jump ahead a little bit, but I do explain in each video why I'm cutting things out and how to move faster and flow better, because I didn't want to sit through those cutscenes for the next 20 hours, so I didn't, and I cut them out. And if you want to watch all the cutscenes, just rewatch the old branches, because they're exactly the same. Yes, it is very tedious. It's fun, and it does explain a lot, so each time you go through it, with branch A being essentially the prologues. He likes to make the first branch detailed but vague at the same time. So you're playing through it and getting the story, you're understanding the character that you play as, trying to learn the protagonist. You gain an attachment to the protagonist. You start fighting the enemies known as Shades. You meet Kaina, you meet Emil, you meet Devla, Popola. You start to care for Yona, hate Grimoire Noir and the Shadow Lord and the Shades, and you start to form attachments. And then you play through and you get the first ending. And it's emotional, it's sad. You get to reunite with your little baby sister. Kaine goes her separate ways, and that's how the game ends. And it feels great. You're like, yay, we won, we solved the fight. It's a little sad that we don't get to see Kaine, but, you know, she had her own things, and we did lose a few members along the way. And it's really tragic, and you're like, wow, that's sad. So when you replay as B, you start to gain more background information. You gain cutscenes from the point of view of the Shades, because once you learn the truth about the protagonist, that maybe, in fact, you are not the hero you thought you were. And so that prologue that you spent all this time gaining love and passion and gaining attachment for the main character, it now starts to get reversed. And your playthrough of B starts to become a little bit questionable, because you realize what you're doing isn't actually a very good thing. You start to see that each one of these villains, these bosses that you're slaying, actually is alive, has feelings, has emotion, has attachment, and is in pain, is suffering, mostly because of the hands of you, or something that you've caused or been a part of. And it turns out that you are in fact not the human and should not be experiencing emotion or cognitive abilities, but you have gone Gestalt, which is breaking the code. You are no longer just a shell waiting for its soul to be reunited, but you are becoming your own person, which was not supposed to happen. And that is what Grimoire Weiss was made to do, was to bring the Gestalt shells back to Noir so that they can be reunited with their souls and become formed whole humans all over again. The entire project was safeguarded by the androids, Devla and Popola, using Noir, which was started by our protagonist, the Shadow Lord, in the early stages of the prologue of the game, where you're fighting in that abandoned city supermarket area. Once he touches Noir, he ends up creating the separation between his body and the soul, and that's where the Shadow Lord comes out, because he becomes that shade. Yona, as well, because of how sick she is, when she touches her version of Noir, there are multiple books, and I will explain that. When she touches her version of Noir, it fails because of how sick she is, and she starts going very Gestalt, and it doesn't work out, and that's why he has to hurry along and try to save the other version, or the shell, the replicant, and bring her back. But as you're playing through B, you start to have existential crisis, thinking, maybe I don't want to kill everything that I think I've been killing, and I'm so angry at all these humans, but I shouldn't be, because they're just trying to survive, and now I'm a bad guy for slaughtering everyone when no one was doing anything to me in the first place. And then it all comes crashing down even further, and you start to lose hope in yourself, lose passion in what you're doing. You lose characters and you realize that you're losing them for no reason. Emil dies for nothing because you didn't need to be doing this in the first place. Devla and Popola are terrible and they have been tricking you your whole life and trying to force you to essentially go back to the Shadow Lord so that you can be killed and returned. They've been using you. Kaine is infected by a shade and she doesn't know how to control it. It's a mess. You end Branch B with a very similar ending to Branch A. Kaine leaves. You are reunited with your sister, but in this, you also get to see Shadow Lord and Yona reunite in kind of the afterlife-y, souls reuniting type way, and they get to live their gestalt lives together in this soul. And you see all of the bosses that you meaninglessly slaughtered and took their souls from and hurt yourself in the process. And it was such a joy, and you laughed and had such a good time, didn't you? No hard feelings, right? Sure, now let's go to Branch C, which is incredibly identical to Branch B, but now you get only three additional cutscenes. Only 3 additional cutscenes about Devla and Popola, and you start to see that they were talking to each other throughout the time of you playing the game and plotting against you and trying to use you. And so you gain your hatred for Devla and Popola. Well, personally, okay, that's biased, but I have a hatred for Devla and Popola because of my baby boy Emil being killed at the end of the game. But now you kind of also start to get Kaine's story. You get that probably was in Branch B, but you get that long text reading of Kaine's shade, Tyron, and you start to learn about her. You start to hear Tyron's voice when he's in Kaine's head. And when you get to Branch C, which is where we finally start to get the changes, because after we add all those additional things, learning more and more about the bosses, becoming attached to them because they're really just humans in a lot of pain and they're sad and they want to be human again and reunite with their souls and they want to live happy lives, and you are a murderer who is slaughtering people endlessly and you are ruining the entire faith of humanity and you are terrible. But you're just like, hey, this is fine, I'll just keep playing and keep killing everything because I want to know what happens, but really you're just a terrible person. Isn't that great? Now we're getting towards the end of C, and Tyron is really in Kaine's head. And finally, once you beat that Shadow Lord again, after you play through the game again, and you have collected all 33 weapons again, because I had to replay it multiple times, you finally get to continue after that reuniting with Yona. But now you get to see Kaine, and what happens to Kaine when she starts to go a little bit out of whack, and when her shade takes over her body. So you are forced to fight Kaine. It is very emotional and very sad, and I hated doing it. As you can tell by the video, I cried the whole time. Thank you for that. And then you are forced with a choice, and this choice leads you to either Branch C or Branch D. Branch C is the game ending version, where you take Kaine's life and erase her of her pain, and you go on to live with your sister Yona, and Kaine gets freed of her shade and her burden and complete the quest. It's a sad ending and it really hurt to do, but that is not the true ending of the game. So then you go back and you replay the game again, or if you know what's coming, you save right before you go in the Shadow Lord's castle, and then you just replay that castle part because it's the exact game. If you want to play it for the 4th time, be my guest, but I didn't. And then you play to Branch D, which is making the choice to sacrifice yourself for the sake of Kaine. That means your entire existence becomes erased. No one remembers you. Everything you did, everyone you killed, every weapon you collected, every side quest you completed, every hour you spent in the game was 1000% meaningless. You meant nothing. No one will remember you. And it erases your game, it erases your data, and you give your life to Kaine. And Kaine wakes up, not knowing who you are, but completely free of her shade. Happy ending, right? All around. But that's not the end of the game. So what you have to do is then boot up the game all over again, and not from the way you've been playing BC, but from A, where you go all the way to Act 1 and start over as child protag all over again. You start in the abandoned city, then you move all the way through collecting the sealed verses up until you meet Kaine. Outside of the Aerie, you go around doing a few more sealed verses, and then when you go back to the Aerie and you fight Hook, the giant shade with the big tail and the chest balls, his name is Hook. Peter Pan. Yes, it is a Peter Pan reference because the other shade you fight there is called Wendy. But sidetracked. You fight Hook, and at the end of the fight with Hook, Kaine is laying on the ground and your child protagonist is trying to wake her up. And instead of continuing from there where she joins your party and then you eventually go to Facade to meet the king for the very first time, you instead wake up as Kaine inside her tent. And she starts to think that she remembers someone, and you start to play as Kaine, which is super cool. Her combat was super fun, and it's just really nice to see her without her shade and her turmoil, but you're now Kaine and you're playing along, and you have to solve the final part of the game, which is the Lost World. You get sent all the way over to the Forest of Myth, our favorite place, which is always filled with black text and dialogue, but for the first time, it is not. And you go in to the magical tree, the tree of life, the tree of souls, and you go in there, and it starts to become very futuristic. There's wires everywhere, there's electronics, there's machine life forms, it's got androids talking to you, these two twins, and you play through this entire sequence of essentially battling yourself. You kind of start to reunite with your friends. Our little baby boy, Emil, comes back to life after he pieced himself together in the desert. It's been, I think it was 3 years? Okay, I don't know how long it was. I'm lying. The number will be here. It's been this long since she woke up from the Shadow Lord's castle. And she's been trying to figure out who she is, what she's trying to remember, and Emil comes back after he's pieced himself back together because he lost his entire body in the process. And there's a lot more that goes on with that too, but that's not revealed in the game. That got revealed later. We'll talk about it. And you fight the twins. You start to learn the twins and learn that they're androids from a future, past, present thing. They have data collected. They're very interested in Kaine and why they're interested in Kaine and learning about her past and learning about her present, her actions, her motivations. And you fight the twins, you fight your past demons, and it becomes very futuristic and very technic. And it's strange, but this is where we're transitioning into Automata, and we're starting to see the world we're going to be playing in the theoretical conclusion of our story. I say that because I never know if Taro's going to release something else, but this is where we transition into Automata. You fight your demons, the twins, you win, you bring yourself back, you bring your memories back, you reunite, sort of, with Vice. He comes back to you and helps you bring your protagonist back home. Why is he a child instead of the adult NieR? We bring him back, Kaine reunites with him, she has a meal, and she wants to just live in the world that they have. As we transition to the future, Yona's back, the shades are still there, the Shadow Lord is gone, but we know the truth. Devila and Popola are gone, and ta-da! Don't you feel great? I know, that's just the synopsis. We're going to talk about it. Let's get into it. As with all of Taro's games, these games are heavily focused on cutscenes, dialogue, and music. Music is very important for setting the scene of the game. I have talked about Kokichi Akabe many times in the Drakengard 3 video. He writes the soundtracks. We've got the choir. We've got the orchestra. They set the tone. It's meant to evoke emotion, finding passion in things, so that when you hear something like this, you're immediately transported back to the game, back to the world, and you know who that character is for. You feel the emotion in the music itself, and it sets the tone. Music has always been very important. I'm not going to go all the way back into the history of talking about the building of Monaco, the writing of the songs. I have done that in Drakengard 3. It's all very similar. They come back to write for NieR because they were done at the same time. The games were made at the same time. NieR was made before Drakengard 3. So the history is still there. I'm not going to redo that. You want more on the music? It's tagged with timestamps in the Drakengard 3 retrospective video. Check that out. But I'm just letting you know that the music is always going to be very prominent in every single one of these games. Let's just get that out there, okay? So, this game is taking place 1,000 years. This game takes place after the fall of Drakengard 1, where the red dragon falls out of the sky and is shot down by the Tokyo Japanese Air Force, crashes down on the tower, and white ash falls from the sky and starts to kill people. And then we transition into the Legion being created in order to wipe out this white ash from the sky, the red eye syndrome being used in the Legion to wipe out, Luciferase is being created, and we transition into the fall, the destruction of the world. And because of this white ash that is falling from the sky, it is exactly why Replicant Project and Gestalt is made. The events of the White Chlorination Syndrome and Project Gestalt were named in reference to the collapse of the Twin Towers of 9/11. It was inspired by that. In this collapse, 56 people were killed and 320 others were injured. The total damage was estimated by the Japanese government at over 60 billion yen. Despite the authorities' censorship, many conspiracy theories were emerging as to the true nature of the Battle of the Giant and the Dragon. The latter's body was recovered and then transferred to a secret laboratory by the authorities in order to study its nature. Meanwhile, the international community and public opinion in a state of disarray were trying to understand the nature of this event. To this end, Japan held a summit in which included the United States, China, and Russia, and as a result, the decision was made to increase the military budgets. A few months later, a strange disease became known as the White Chlorination Syndrome, or WCS, struck a part of Shinjuku's inhabitants. This caused the sufferer's body to calcify entirely, transforming him into a salt statue. The world scientists had begun studying this new type of disease. The mortality rate of the infected subjects seemed to reach 100%, but it was later discovered that the WCS could also lead, in contrast to calcification, to the appearance of extremely violent and similar behaviors of psychotic madness. As the epidemic escalated within Shinjuku and transferred an increasing number of people into threats into the public order, the government put an end to mobility in districts and declared entry into forced martial law. Years later, satellite images of Shinjuku revealed that a huge black spot had formed in the heart of the confined areas. Nevertheless, its origin was very much unknown, and barely 3 months after its discovery, the Wall of Jericho was breached from the inside. This was built around the city of Shinjuku to keep the contained humans of WCS inside. A stream of raging white creatures poured over the surrounding areas, spreading death and despair. These were actually the former humans infected by the WCS and later became known as the Legion. Among them, a blood-eyed monster named Red Eye was spotted coordinating the Legion assaults. Distraught by the attacks of these new types of enemies and handicapped by the efficiency of their traditional weapons, the Japanese self-defense force suffered many casualties. To make matters worse, the fall of the Wall of Jericho caused a resurgence of the WCS epidemic in adjacent regions. In a matter of days, the situation had grown completely out of control. Many refugees flooding to territories that were less afflicted by the virus, but only caused it to spread further throughout the region. Japan accepted military alliance with the United States, eager to conduct research on the corpses of the Legion. But despite the efforts of the two great forces to repel the creatures with carpet bombing, the Legion forces were barely shaken. No operation, even on a large scale, seemed capable of containing their proliferation. With their backs against the wall, the United States and Japan were considering the nuclear option, greatly supported by the international community. On August 6, 2009, 64 years to the day of the Hiroshima disaster, the first atomic bomb was finally dropped on Shinjuku, in the original home of the Legion. Over the next few days, more nuclear warheads were dropped on strategic areas occupied by the enemy. Most of Japan was devastated by nuclear fire. According to the initial reports, the bombing campaign was a success, and all traces of the Legion vanished. But very quickly, cases of WCS began to break out all over the rest of the world, first in China, then Asia, and then eventually all over the globe. The Legion appeared in large numbers on all 5 continents, led by their leader Red Eye, who had survived the Japanese nuclear winter. In the aftermath of this global disaster, research to uncover the Legion's secret was intensified. Studies conducted on the body of the dragon allowed the scientific community to shed some light on causes of WCS. Evidence has indeed shown that according to the parallel universe theory, the dragon and the giant had entered this dimension from a different world, which we know to be true, as Kame and Angelus fell through a portal with the giant beast that led them to modern-day Tokyo. Thus, when the Grotesquerie Queen disintegrated and infinity particles foreign to this reality decimated Shinjuku Meso, also known as demonic element, was the pathogen of the white chlorination syndrome. It was highly infectious and could be transmitted through bodily fluids, feces, cough, or even through the respiratory tract. Meso was immune to heat or explosives, even nuclear. Thus, the research had demonstrated that the multiple atomic raids on Japan, ironically enough, only resulted in dispersing Meso particles all over the planet. At the same time, researchers realized that the energy was equally stored among multiple parallel universes, taking advantage of the fact that the demonic element had come from a different dimension and had consequently disrupted this behavior. Scientists managed to use the particles extracted from the dragon to break the law of mass conservation and thus, in total repudiation of Larzavar principle, create from nothing. This process was called magic. In reality, when humans came in contact with Meso, which we could consider as the Watcher Atom, God offered them a pact. If they agreed, they would become members of the Legion, bloodthirsty creatures in the Great Maker's service. If they refused, however, they would die of calcification. Through the use of the dragon's Meso properties, they notably managed to extract human souls and then reinsert them into the body with no consequences. And so began the Gestalt Project, which was intended to immunize humanity against WCS by dissociating the carnal envelope from the spiritual being, while keeping both intact. The pressing need, nonetheless, remained to repel the growing number of Legion troops. A new drug was created, the luciferase, with properties allowing them to slow down the virus infection. The strategy was clear. Gather elite soldiers, force-feed them luciferase, and send them to the front to annihilate the Legion. The first crusade was formed and sent to Brazil, though none of the soldiers survived. After checking the causes of failure, it turned out that the effects of luciferase only worked properly on children. The Hamlin Organization and the International Consortium then founded a recruit and then train teenagers with great physical abilities and naturally predisposed to combat. They would be dispatched to different areas of operation where they would fight the Legion. While the International Hamlin Organization benefited from virtual monopoly on using military use of magic, the Archipelago's authorities, who did not depend on foreign aid and depend themselves against the hordes of the Legion, decided to set up the National Weapons Laboratory, concealed beneath a huge mansion. Its objective involved the local development of magic weapons that would provide the country with a strategic advantage. Like its direct competitor, the laboratory rapidly started experimenting on children. In 2025, 7 young people were subjected to atrocious torture in order to turn them into weapons. At first, the operation was a success. Number 6, previously known as Halua, had become the perfect weapon, capable of annihilating just about any enemy. But overwhelmed by pain and physical transformations, the creature became enraged and attacked its human creators. The magic weapon number 7, or Emil, Halua's brother, which the scientists had endowed with the power to petrify, helped them lock number 6 in the depths of the laboratory. After this bitter failure, the funds were cut and the structure closed. Emil, for his part, took up residence in the mansion and forgot his origins for over a millennium. Following the luciferase and laboratory failures, Project Gestalt revived with a resurgence of interest from institutions. For the first time, scientists had succeeded in reintegrating a soul, or a Gestalt, into a physical copy of the individual or replicant. The replicant system was therefore set up on the basis of genetic data stored in the Gestalt. It was possible to clone artificial bodies at will. The Gestaltization process, extracting the soul from the body, and replicantization process, inserting the soul into a body identical to the original one, were presented to the public, and a roadmap was drafted. All of humanity would be transformed into Gestalt and put to sleep, while replicants who would be endowed with a minimal consciousness, immunized against the WCS, would be in charge of traveling across Earth and purifying it of all traces of Meso and the Legion. To this end, androids would be placed at strategic locations around the globe to monitor and process operations and ultimately return the Meso particles recovered by the replicants to their original dimension. Once the entire planet had been purged, the Gestalts would be able to safely join their corresponding replicant. Thus, mankind would be saved. After many years spent studying the magic, scientists successfully transferred the Gestalts into book-like vessels equipped with the necessary ability to perform replicantization. This was Project Grimoire. Among the 13 sealed books which had been created, the Grimoire Noir and Grimoire Vice released a sufficient quantity of energy, while simultaneously activated to perform the transfer of souls. Everything was therefore ready, and the wealthiest citizens among the upper classes were the first to take part in the Gestaltization process. Nevertheless, the World Purification Organization, the public face of the Project Gestalt, had discovered that over long periods, or sometimes because of technological errors, Gestalts had a tendency to gradually lose consciousness and became violent. Despite their loss of the carnal envelope, Gestalts had physical form and could interact with the physical world. Ultimately, this so-called relapse phenomenon resulted in the permanent death of the Gestalt. A series of analysis revealed that in order to stabilize the soul's consciousness, solid and pure Meso had to be extracted from a Gestalt who had managed to preserve his sentience and physical integrity after Gestaltization, in order to distribute it to the other Gestalts. At the same time it was established to produce this, the special individual, the original Gestalt, the soul extrication process had to be achieved by means of the most powerful magic book, Grimoire Noir. With the support of the Hamlet organization, the World Purification Organization had begun mass-producing copies of Grimoire Noir and distributing them to the poor slums or areas devastated by WCS under the authority of humanitarian operations in hope of finding the original Gestalt. In Tokyo and Shinjuku, the original Gestalt hunt continued. NieR, a 40-year-old, or, in other cases, a child, with mid-length white hair and a hood over his head, was searching for a cure for his sick sister, Yona. As he found the shelter's situation strange, all around him underprivileged people would come to him for help, with contact with copies of Grimoire Noir. Overwhelmed by the book's power, and would instantly transform themselves into relapsed Gestalts. These things no longer had flesh or even a human presence, but their bodies were made up of a translucent pulp of yellow and black matter that could be easily distinguished. Sensing danger, NieR and his sister fled from the furious Gestalts. Driven mad by the book, they chased him through the streets of Japanese capital, and he was trapped in an abandoned supermarket. With threats only a few steps away, NieR saw no other option than to use a copy of Grimoire Noir recovered from the reception center. Fortunately, nothing happened. Or rather, it did. Gestaltified, his soul had managed to preserve the material appearance of his body, and his consciousness was intact. NieR had become the original Gestalt. Assisted by Grimoire Noir and its magic, he easily eliminated the pests, but when he returned to the supermarket to check on his sister, the latter showed the signs of a failed Gestaltization. Convinced that she should protect her, she made the mistake of coming into contact with her own copy of Grimoire Noir and now risked death. In exchange for the World Purification Organization promise to save Yona at the end of Project Gestalt, NieR agreed to provide Meso to the worldwide Gestalts in order to preserve their consciousness until the replicants had been purged from the world. Gestalt Yona, undergoing relapse, was then placed in a deep, long sleep, while all of humanity entered Gestaltization and assured of preserving its sentience. Centuries later, then a millennium passed. Under the leadership of androids, had purified the world of Meso and remains of Legion. In the year 3287, the androids completed the ultimate ceremony to send the last particles that had come from a different dimension back to their original universe. Project Gestalt had come to an end, and all over the world, dormant souls began to awaken in order to integrate into their replicants. However, what they discovered was not going to make their task any easier. The environment's stimuli, the replicants had acquired their own consciousnesses and developed a civilization, currently at a medieval stage. Even worse, through their eyes, replicants perceived the freshly awoken Gestalts as bloodthirsty monsters whom they called shades, and proceeded to eliminate them all. Instead of a replicantization, which was supposed to integrate Gestalt into their flesh and bone vessels, war had broken out all over the globe between the two factions. Simultaneously, the Gestalts, although treated by NieR's Meso, were relapsing and experiencing fits of extreme madness. Replicants' assaults an inevitable relapse of all the Gestalts as their alter egos were awakening to the world. Humanity was once again threatened. In a castle from which he ruled over his conquerors for over 1,000 years, the original Gestalt was concerned about the situation's evolution. If nothing was done, Gestalt would be doomed, and he would never be able to save Yona. However, one hope remained: Project Grimoire. Activating the capacities of Grimoire Noir and Grimoire Vice would provide the Gestalts with the ability to force their mass integration into the replicants. Without further delay, NieR obtained the original Grimoire Noir, stationed in a small country village where they were supervised by the replicants' two androids, Devla and Popola, were in charge of retrieving Grimoire Vice. To do so, they sought the help of NieR's replicant, who, like his conquerors, knew nothing about his true nature. Project Gestalt, even the administrator role, and thus the game starts. So you wake up in that abandoned supermarket with snow falling. But is it snow? No, it's salt. It is the salt of the white chlorination syndrome. And what you are playing through is what story sequence we kind of just read through, is our main character touches his very own copy of Grimoire Noir to integrate himself with the powers and has the first successful Gestaltization, while his sister touches her copy and has a failed one. He partners up with the organization, puts her to sleep, and goes about ridding the world of meso particles in order to make the world safe to reunite the soul with his sisters and save her in the end. It took 1,000 years, as you see when the time transitions in to when we're in that village with our little protagonist, him waking up and being controlled essentially by Devla and Popola, sending him out on quests, him wanting to take care of his young sister because it's ingrained in his kind of DNA to care for his sick little sister. Although he doesn't really have consciousness or know why or what he's doing, he has no knowledge of the project, he has no knowledge that he's a replicant and that he's being used to wake up Vice and bring about the end of the process. And during his journey, he ends up gaining consciousness and cognitive ability and thoughts and starts to think of himself as the hero and everyone else as the bad guy, just as the citizens do, and start killing off the shades, which are the true humans, and thus becomes the problem and cycle. And now we're kind of running through, are we saving humanity, or are we becoming the reason humanity might become extinct soon? And that is the entire process of the game. I am going to have the timeline of the events up on the video that are from the book. These are the Project Gestalt outlines, and I think it's a really interesting thing to read. There's a lot of details. I won't read through all of the details. You can pause the video and read as you so desire. But if you want all the background information and want to learn more about the Wall of Jericho, the Legion, the Red Eyes, the key concepts of Project Gestalt, here's what we've got. It starts with the year 2003. June 12th, the 612 incident occurs, the mysterious giant and red dragon appear. September, the International Summit is held. December, the first victims of the unidentified disease appear. In 2004, in February, death from disease soar. April, the first cases of infected are starting to go berserk, the madness is taking over. May, berserk infected rampage through Shinjuku. June, disease officially named white chlorination syndrome. July, Shinjuku reaches threat level 4. In 2004, September, Shinjuku blockade is announced, the Wall of Jericho. October, the Shinjuku blockade is implemented and the Wall of Jericho is erected. December, the final broadcast from Shinjuku. In 2005, December, the WCS infections start to go on a decline. 2006, May, more learned about WCS. Date unknown, facility holding dragon remains attacked. In 2007, October, anomalies detected by satellite imaging. 2008, February, the Wall of Jericho falls, the Legion is formed, the first sighting of the Red Eye, a self-defense force begins against the Legion. May, WCS resumes rapid spread. August, dragon researchers decamp. September, central government relocates. October, Honshu descends into chaos. 2009, January, Japan and the United States form a military alliance. March, allies resolve to destroy Shinjuku. April, decision made to use nuclear weapons. August, nuclear assault begins with Shinjuku. November, Legion eradicated in Japan. 2010. February. Berserk humans found in China. March. Worldwide outbreak of WC. I think I messed something up. I don't know where it's gonna bug. I had my book leaning on my keyboard and it was like pausing and unpausing my recording. So I'm going through the final stages of the Grimoire NieR book, the revised edition. Interview answers from our director Taro Yoko, scenario writer Sawako Natori, and novelist Jun Ishima. It asks questions. I will start by reading the question and then what the particular answer is. I think there were some questions that you guys might have that I don't have to go out of my way to answer because they were already answered for you and it's pretty simple. So we're talking about Emil in this section. Kaine may have been a focus before the game's release, but once it came out, Emil's feelings for NieR also got a ton of attention. Taro wanted to make this note. I thought I made it pretty obvious with things like Emil's thoughts on clearly finding a bride, but apparently it did not come across. There's also a popular interpretation that fusing with Halua gave him feminine feelings, and that's why he was interested in NieR. Taro says, no, Emil is gay. Ishima says, I'm glad you answered that so definitively. I was wondering if it was just my own dirty mind that had made me perceive him as that way. Then maybe Emil fell in love with Kaine after all the camping they did together, and he meant that he always wanted to be her bride. Our intention was that Emil would see shades of Halua in Kaine and come to view her as more of a big sister. But no, Emil is gay. It was clear to me that when I played the game that both Emil and Kaine seemed to be in love with NieR. However, the game never seems to make it clear who NieR is interested in. Taro says, we didn't want to muddle the main theme of the story. Fundamentally, it's a game about a brother striving to save his sister, and we wanted to ensure that the drama is inherent to that premise. After that, if players are interested in details about the world and the quirks of the characters, we're happy to have them discover those things, but we made a decision not to include much about NieR and Kaine's relationship so as to not take the focus off the main theme. NieR's heart is completely preoccupied with Yona and filled with desire to revenge on the Shades. He's not paying any attention to those subtle feelings for Kaine and Emil, and for her part, Kaine doesn't possess the skills to communicate her feelings very well. She just wants to feel needed by him, even if it's only to help him get his revenge, and that's why she says, I'll become his sword one last time. It says that, incidentally, Kaine only fully becomes aware she's in love with him during their love scene in the Shadow Lord's castle. The love scene? What do you mean? The scene where she kicks him in the stomach. And that's their love scene? Are you sure that's how you want to describe it? Yes, that's what it is. She kicks him in the stomach, and when she's about to punch him, she realizes, oh, you know what? I love this man. And she pulls back in a very feminine way. I think that's the sexiest scene in the game, says Taro. But then NieR chooses, at the end, the someone I love line feels a little bit more abrupt. Taro states, that was just for effect. You know, NieR saying something dramatic in the moment. Regardless, I'd like people to view the choice in terms of, does the player love Kaine or not? So you kind of end up making that choice with branch C and D, whether do you love Kaine or do you love your sister or yourself. So endings C and D are particularly open to interpretation from the player. I see NieR's game, in that sense, has a wide appeal. People often say it's not a game for everyone, but it's not like it forces a certain answer on you. But make no mistake, this is a weird game. The game in the beginning, midway through the 21st century, with it snowing during the summer in Shinjuku, that was quite a surprise to me. Taro goes, oh no, that wasn't snow, it was salt. Corpses throughout the world had undergone white chlorination and were breaking apart. The salt is entering the atmosphere and falling back down because of white chlorination syndrome. In the year 2003, Caim and Angelus came into this world, battle the giant, and are shot down by the Self-Defense Force, which releases the meso particles from their bodies. When humans come in contact with meso, they are entered into the world to what's called a pact in the Drakengard series, but it's really more of a curse. The pact was with the gods, and you become their servant to work and destroy the world that defies your will, becoming part of the gods' legion. If you decline this pact, you turn into salt and die. Either way, you can't live on as a human, so to protect themselves, humanity came up with the idea of going Gestalt to avoid it. Going Gestalt involves putting your soul into a Yorishio, a totem of sorts that was created from the body of the dragon, Drakengard-style pact involved in an exchange of souls. But in this case, your partner is a soulless dragon. There is nothing to exchange. Your soul is then safely transferred back into the Yoshiro, and this protects you from white chlorination syndrome. Since your soul has been separated from your body and the pact, the curse doesn't take effect even if you come into contact with meso, so that your possible soul can be reunited with its body later. Are those relapse cases shades that attack replicants? Taro says, NieR and Yona were about to be part of the Gestalt process experiment, but NieR grew suspicious and the siblings fled the facility. NieR must have realized how dangerous going Gestalt would be. Does NieR relapse at all? Taro says NieR underwent the Gestalt process, expecting to relapse. The reason he didn't is that he happened to possess an inherent stability that wasn't vulnerable to degradation. The reason for it isn't clear, but he was only subject of any experiment before after the day is not to relapse, and the World Purification Commission used him because of it. But since Yona had relapsed, it was only a matter of time before she died. They convinced NieR if he provided the meso to stabilize the other Gestalts, they would eventually find some way to save her. And he ended up doing that for 1,000 years. And that's how he became regarded as the Lord of the Gestalts and the Shades. It wasn't for Gestalt NieR, they would have all been relapsed. They would have all relapsed. However, the promised cure for Yona didn't arrive, and Gestalt NieR eventually realized it would never. So he decided to return Yona's Gestalt into her replicant and himself into his own replicant so they could live out the rest of their lives together. But why were Devla and Popola supporting him? Having been programmed to serve humanity's interest in the complete project, Devla and Popola intervene. Their goal is not to make the Shadow Lord happy, but to complete the project. They know the Shadow Lord is taking matters into his own hands could lead to the failure of the project, so in order to stop him, they hurriedly attempt to engineer the fusion of Vice and Noir, which immediately will reunite all of the Gestalt souls with their replicants' bodies. In the short story, we learn from And Then There Were None that Grimoire Vice and Noir have Gestalt sealed within them. But what exactly are they? They're part of a program that utilizes magic. By activating Grimoire Noir, all the Gestalts can be returned to their replicants, and this world of replicants can become a world of humans. The keys needed to activate the system and Vice are the sealed verses. The reason the sealed verses function as combat magic is because they were intended to be used for battling the Legion. You need Grimoire Vice to activate Grimoire Noir, and you need the sealed verses to activate Vice. Effectively, it's a two-stage lock that's been designed to avoid premature activation so that the Overseers can trigger it when the time is right. And when does that time come right? When the Legion have been completely wiped away and white chlorination syndrome is no longer a concern. However, Gestalt NieR, the Shadow Lord, becomes aware he's being deceived. Yona shows no signs of recovering, and he becomes frustrated that nothing ever changes, so he resorts to his own extreme measures and tries to steal Yona and his own replicant. And Vice. This shakes the system to its core. So let's say Replicant NieR didn't kill the Shadow Lord and allowed his body to be taken over and Grimoire Vice and Noir fused. Would peaceful human society have returned? If the Legion were gone and the white chlorination syndrome was under control, then yes. But even if it did happen that way, it wouldn't do anything to cure Yona's black scrawl. It wouldn't save her. Yeah, no matter what they do, no path remains that could lead to Yona and NieR living together for long. Replicant NieR and Yona may survive, but because Replicant killed NieR, Gestalt NieR, there's no more stabilizing the meso particles, meaning Gestalts will all ultimately relapse, and that will make it impossible for their corresponding replicants to be reborn. Not to mention, Devla and Popola has also been killed. Without them managing the system of death and birth, all replicants in their region will die out within the current generation. And Yona's black scrawl has not been cured, and so it will continue to progress until she dies. So when you put it like that, it's like nothing Replicant NieR did accomplish anything at all. Correct. I guess it's true that whatever ending you get, it's always the same progression. First Yona dies, and then everyone dies. Yep. Welcome to Yoko Taro's universe. Even among all the short stories collected in this book, I think the most shocking one is The Lost World, which chronicles what happens after ending D. I like to consider that ending E. I imagine people who were left feeling brokenhearted after ending D will enjoy it. So, what's going on in this ending E? In the story, after the Shadow Lord is slain, a program that reboots the replicant system is activated within the Forest of Myth, and Kaine destroys it. Why does NieR return in his younger form? Because he was remade based on the memory of the first time he visited the Forest of Myth. Also, as the writer, I wanted to insert the element of let's start over from that time when we were all having fun and adventuring together. That was another part of it. Kaine could have Emil turn her to stone for another 5 years. Emil has 4 arms now, and I'm sure he could do that in his sleep. But after 5 years, the replicants have gestalts would probably all be dying one after the other from the Black Scrawl. Even without the destruction system, sooner or later, they're all gonna die. Yeah, they are. How cruel. As I've mentioned before, as part of this universe, there is a bunch of novellas that go with the games. I'll have that timeline here for you to look at. I've already read the And Then There Were None novella in this playthrough. It talks about the creation of Project Grimoire. You can check that out. I read that story. I can link to you the story of Fira, a little princess. It talks about her growing up, her indentureness, her servitude, and how she became the princess, the queen, and started living in Facade. It's a really good story. It's a short story, sad. It talks about her learning all of the rules. If you want me to read that for you so you can listen instead, let me know and I will do a little princess reading. But the one story I do want to conclude this retrospective with is Around the World in 80 Days, because it talks about Emil, and that is very important as Emil is going to show up in Automata, and it explains kind of the gap on where he disappears after the Shadow Lord's castle and rebuilds his body. So, let's read Around the World in 80 Days. The head that came rolling and soaring through the sky is now a head that rolls and soars around the world. Day 1. I gotta say, it sure is hard to move around in the desert. Oof, man, I'm stuck in the sand again. Okay then, here we go! It's funny to think about how glad I was to see sand after I was sent flying. I mean, if I'd landed on top of a boulder or something, I probably wouldn't have ended well, no matter how unkillable my sister's body is. Still, I never imagined it would be so hard to move around in sand. I mean, the masked people were always making it look so gosh darn easy, and sure, NieR had trouble with it from time to time, but he still's way faster than I am now. I know, I keep saying this, but I really gotta find myself a new body. How am I gonna do that when the only thing around here is sand? Maybe I could use magic to turn them into a body? No. Except, wait, how am I gonna cast a spell without any hands? For that matter, I don't even have my staff anymore. Boy, this sure is a pickle. Nope, I'm clearly going about this all wrong. Rather than getting up all in my head about it, I should just give it a try. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? I mean, I don't need a staff to focus my magical power, so I can just do it in the sand, like this, and whoa! Oh, wow, whoa, whoa! That kicked up one heck of a sand cloud. I guess that's deserts for you. You can whip a sandstorm anywhere. I better do something about this. Okay. The clouds finally settled. Woo! Well, at least I know I've still got plenty of magic even without a staff or hands, so that's good news. Also, I made myself a proper body, so now I can walk again. Oh, what? I'm sinking. My head's sinking. Oh, my body fell apart. Well, I guess you can't expect much in the way of durability when you make things out of sand, but at least I know I can use magic, so if I can just find stronger materials, I should be able to make a stronger body. Yeah, that'll totally work. Maybe we can chalk this up to a learning experience. Right then. Time to get myself somewhere that's not just sand. Actually, I wish the sand was dirt so I could roll on it, because right now, I'm stuck again. Day 9. I finally made it out of the desert. I really wish it hadn't been taking me so long, because I got so tired of staring at the same scenery all the time. In fact, I don't ever want to think or see another grain of sand again. Anyways, at least I'm done with all that now. Although this new area is pretty rocky. Oh, and hard. In fact, it might be a little too hard, and it's for sure too bumpy, which means getting around isn't any easier. And it hurts. Ow, ow, I keep hitting bumps. I tell you what, if I can't walk around on proper pair of legs, I'm gonna run out of HP in no time. Better make a body and toot sweet. Thankfully, these harder rocks are good for anything. It should make for a nice strong body. Now then, yeah! Yeah, even without a staff, my spellcasting is a little wonky. Was yeah the right magic word for this? I really didn't feel like it. But hey, at least my magic still works, so let's call it good. And there we are. Boy, That body sure does look tough, and now it's time to race back to NieR and the others. Better hurry, too, because Kaine and Weiss are probably already at each other's throats. Okay. Why am I not moving? What's going on? Dang it. This body's way too heavy. Day 17. Well, it sure took me long enough to make it out of that rocky area, and I think my head lost HP in the process, but hey, all's well that ends well, right? I'm finally back on the dirt too, so that's not hard. It's not too soft. What a treat. Oh, and there's also a lovely lake here, plus more water birds than you'll find in the northern plains. Maybe it's easier for them to survive here without any shades around? Regardless, I'm sure I can find the right materials in a place like this. Still, what should I use? I need something strong enough to support my head, but that isn't too heavy. Light and strong, light and strong. Oh, that's it! I can use the feathers of the water birds. See, I read in a book once that the bird feathers are basically a harder form of skin. They're also super flexible, so if I gather a bunch together and magic them up, they should be plenty strong. Best of all, they're light. If you want to move fast, you gotta be light. Let's see. With so many birds around, I can wait downwind and get all the feathers. Bundles of them, bundles of them, birdles of them. Birdles of them? I'll have to remember that. I bet NieR will think it's funny. Anywho, time to sit back and wait. Okay, this isn't working. At all. I haven't gotten a single feather. Maybe it isn't molting season? Well, these birds have left me no choice. I'm gonna have to catch them and pluck them. Oh, but just a little. I don't want to be the poor little guy that's not able to fly anymore. That'd be cruel. Instead, I'll just take a couple from each one. Anyway, I better get started, so here goes nothing. Oh, wait. How am I supposed to catch birds without any hands? I mean, maybe I'm falling into the lake. Whoa. That was terrible. I could have caught a nasty cold. Thankfully, I just ended up soaking my body, my head, I guess. Well, still, at least now I know my head can swim, so I don't have to worry about drowning. Oh man, if NieR ever falls in the water again, I can rescue him! Oh, that would be so cool! Day 26. Well, I've managed to gather a few feathers, and by that I mean enough to make one finger of a new body. Maybe I should just make some clothes instead. After all, one's personal appearance matters. Even if I do end up smelling kind of like a bird. What's that wolf coming over here for? Hey, stop it, wolf! I'm not edible! You get that, right? Listen to what I'm telling you. I'm not a bird, okay? I'm not a boo. That was terrifying. Thankfully, my head's okay, but the wolf ran off with all my feathers. What a thoughtless wolf! Doesn't he know I can't eat feathers? Also, I thought wolves mostly lived in the desert, so maybe that fellow split off from the pack? I guess he did seem different from the kind that attacked the mass people. He also probably not mean at all and cranky like they were. Probably. Day 31. Oh, geez, now what? Not another wolf. No, wait, that doesn't look like a wolf, although it certainly is a large beast of some sort. Wait, what was this animal called again? Some kind of predator in the cat family, right? Some kind of... Oh no, this is no time for taxonomy. I need to get out of here before this thing eats me. I mean, look at those claws, and if it goes after me even with my sister's body, I might be immortal enough to survive. Hey, don't eat me! Sent me rolling and poking a few times, but geez, oh gosh, hang, is this thing playing with me? Does this feline predator think I'm a toy? Seriously, quit rolling me already. I'm not a ball. Well, that's right, I can use magic. Time to cast a spell and fly away. Phew, managed to get away, and that's a relief, although my head's still spinning something fierce. Day 33. I really wish I'd figure out I could fly sooner. If I had, I wouldn't have hurt myself on all those rocks, and it wouldn't have taken me so long to get out of the desert. What a total goof on my part. Speaking of regrets, I don't think I've been going about this whole materials for my body thing the right way. Maybe just trying to whip a body together out of whatever single substance is nearby really isn't the answer. Like even that store in the junk heap that uses all kind of different materials to enhance their weapons, right? Geez, if I knew this was gonna happen, I'd have paid more attention to what they did in that store. But the thing is, that little brother creeps me out, and each time we visit, I feel like his eyes get more and more crazy. I wonder if the rumor's true that he cut off his own arm. Think, Emil, think. Where did NieR get all of his materials? I feel like he dug some out of the ground. Maybe. No, and then picked a few others on the beach. Well, the important thing is that it was slow and a steady effort, and I should try to learn from that. Day 59. I've traveled so far I can't even see the lake anymore. Every day I'm somewhere new I've never been. I know I can't have traveled all around the world, but maybe I've done like a fourth of it. Once I learned to fly, I thought I'd be nothing but safe and pleasant days ahead, but air travel is a lot less smooth than I thought it would be. There's all sorts of birds of prey and winged shades and stuff in the skies, and even if I can fight them off with my spells, the thing is, the more baggage I collect, and by which I mean materials, the harder it gets to fight. I'm using magic to carry my stuff, and magic to fly, and magic to fight, which is 3 things at once, and it makes my head get all mixed up. Or maybe it's the magic that gets mixed up, like those times where I'm shooting beams out of my eyes. Anyway, that's what's the more materials I get, the more I've traveled on land. They say if you want to find something, you've got to keep your eyes to the ground, after all. And I figure that's even more true if your eyes are literally rolling on the ground. Heck, I'm finding all sorts of stuff, including iron ore and natural rubber and clay. Plus, the beaches have fun surprises like driftwood and black pearls. On the downside, it sure wasn't fun when I rolled into that giant spider. Day 66. I made it to Seafront. I'm finally back. I know NieR's village is only a little ways from here. I've got tons of materials, so I'm just gonna fly the rest of the way. Oh, I can't wait to see NieR again. Oh, and Kaine and Vice, too. Why is an entire flock of seagulls flying over here? Oh no, do they think I'm intruding on their territory? Please stay back, seagulls. This is all just a big misunderstanding. I'm serious, you guys. You don't understand how hard it is to fly when I'm holding so much stuff. Well, I ended up falling into the ocean, and the seagulls are a lot more aggressive than you'd think. I had no idea. Yeah, this is just really unfortunate. Once the seawater dries, I'm gonna be all sticky and gross. Oh, but look, that's a rusty bucket. NieR uses those to upgrade his weapons. I bet I could use it to upgrade my body. What a lucky break, huh? I guess sinking into the ocean now and then isn't such a bad thing. Oh, hey, I know that fish. It's a Dunkelostus. NieR had a heck of a time landing one of those guys, even after all the lessons from that old man from the Perfect Cast. But even more importantly... Hey, you can't eat me. Do you see how hard my face is? You'll break your teeth. Okay, now you're trying to swallow me whole, so stop it before... No! Sheesh, I'm lucky I got out of that alive. Time to get a new body made so nothing like that ever happens again. Day 80. With all the materials I gathered, I should be able to make a body better than my old one. It's gonna be super strong, but also very cool. Well, better get started. I'll lay out the materials on the ground and give them a good blast of magic. Yeah. Huh? Boy, do I not have a good feeling about this. Why is smoke pouring out of the stopped clock, and why are sparks popping out of my pyrite like crazy? Did my spell fail? No, it's burning! It's all burning! The skill books are going up like kindling. Oh gosh, is it going to explode? Oh jeez, that blast really sent me flying, but wait, am I in the desert again? I am! Well, back to square one, I guess. Oh hey, now that I totally get what expression means. Ha, it's like a board game where you roll the dice and you land on the big black X and you get sent back to the first square you started on, huh? Never really thought about that before. Reminds me of how Sebastian used to say, "You are far more talented at breaking things than making things, Master Ramil." I guess he was really right about that, huh? At this rate, I may not ever get back to my new body. And if I take any longer, Kaine and Weiss will have moved on to actual bloodshed by the time I find them. I mean, Kaine's real quick to resort to violence, and Weiss doesn't know when to stop talking, so... Okay, Emil, pull it together. We need to get back to NieR. But first, I gotta get out of this desert, which means... Here we go! And then we see him once again in Branch E of Kaine's story. It takes all that time and more till he gets his body remade. And that's not the end of it. There's more to Emil, and we're gonna see him again. But that's where we reunite with him in Branch E. I hope that answered many of your questions and is as good of an explanation as I can get. For now, I can do more novellas and short stories and add more things in here and there, include weapon histories if you're interested in them. I could, scan them and add them to a video if you want to read about the weapon histories. Every weapon in every version of the game has incredible weapon histories. Very funny, very entertaining, very sad, very tragic, very cool. Everything's very well thought out. Very, 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 very. I know I use that word a lot. It doesn't sound real anymore. Thank you for enjoying Replicant with me. Thank you for enjoying this story. We're going to move on to the in-betweens of Replicant and Automata, and then we're going to go into Automata, my favorite game. I'm biased, but I love it very much. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any more questions and want me to cover any more about this, let me know down in the comments. If you're tired of this series, I don't care. I'm going to keep going. So I'll see you in the next video. But for now, we're clocking out. Bye-bye.